that was very heavy content with Yemen, so we want to lighten it up with the genocide trial at The Hague.
Well, the genocide trial comes at a nice time for you because you were just in Greece and Italy for a month, and you're actually wanted at The Hague for a few different things. Getting wasted on grappa, pissing up the Colosseum wall, stealing the towels from the Athens hotel. So works out for you because they get to push that back.
Stealing the marble from the Vatican. But in my defense, they stole it first.
Yeah.
If you go to the Vatican, if everyone's ever been to the Vatican, it's basically like walking through the forgotten attic of Western civilization. It's like your grandma shoved all the crap she gathered over the millennia into an attic, and you just kind of walk through it. So if that's a recommendation, go to the Vatican, depending on your taste. Jimmy went there. He actually hated it. But I think that's because he was raised Catholic. A lot of Catholics have. I've talked to other Catholics who had that reaction to the Vatican because they look at the wealth, they look at the opulence, and it just reminds them of everything that they went through at that church. When
they leave without getting laid, then they're really in a bad mood.
Then they're really, a
lot of blue balls coming out of the Vatican.
I mean, it's one of those things.
Pent up men.
Yeah. like the guys in Crown Heights, which I have not forgotten my promise. I have been researching this. There will be a Mole People Part 2. I did look into the high chair. I did look into the mattress. We'll get to it on Monday. All right, because this was a little more important, I thought. Okay, so as y'all probably know, South Africa has brought a case against Israel for genocide at the ICJ. So it's a 2-day trial. Today, Israel went on. We've got a little bit of that. But first, we'll take a look at the case that South Africa put up. There is quite a bit of poetic justice in South Africa, a state that suffered from apartheid, bringing this case. This name I am going to destroy, because nobody really has a Gaelic name. You never hear it. So I have no idea how you pronounce this. Blain Ni Gale. That's the best I can do with this. But she gave an incredible speech that people have really been sharing around. So let's take a look at a little bit of that.
It is becoming ever clearer that huge swathes of Gaza, entire towns, villages, refugee camps are being wiped from the map. As you have heard, but it bears repeating, according to the World Food Programme, 4 out of 5 people in the world in famine or a catastrophic type of hunger are in Gaza right now. Indeed, experts warn that deaths from starvation and disease risk significantly outstripping deaths from bombings. The daily statistics stand as clear evidence of the urgency and of the irreparable prejudice. On the basis of the current figures, on average, 247 Palestinians are being killed and are at risk of being killed each day, many of them literally blown to pieces. They include 48 mothers each day, 2 every hour, and over 117 children each day, leading UNICEF to call Israel's actions a war on children. Entire multi-generational families will be obliterated, and yet more Palestinian children will become WCNSF. Wounded Child, No Surviving Family, the terrible new acronym born out of Israel's genocidal assault on the Palestinian population in Gaza.
And this is just getting started. It is hard to see how the court finds its way to ruling against them. South Africa put up a very good case, and Israel's case, as we'll see, was what you would expect. Anything, Keaton?
I was talking to our friend Nick Cruz on RBN last night about this, and he made a good point that this is an opportunity to further illuminate people, further radicalize people, if you want to use that term. Although I think opposition to genocide is a fairly moderate position, actually. I don't think there's anything terribly radical about that. The disconnect between the presence of this story, this ICJ case, on social media and in mainstream media is just night and day. You can't get away from this online. You cannot, not online, I'm sorry, on social media, on X, on Facebook. It is everywhere, Instagram, everywhere. You go to, your Apple News app on your phone, nowhere. It's nowhere on the front page of that. And so this is an opportunity now where there is actually real purpose and real value to sharing these videos around, because that's ultimately how useful this case is going to be, is how can we formally and for all the world to see make the most obvious point in the world that we are being gaslighted out of believing by our own press and our own leaders.
Well said. All right, so let's take a look. This was kind of the centerpiece of the case, and in terms of what you're talking about, this clip is probably the one that's made the rounds the most. This is Adelia Hassim, a lawyer presenting the South African case, and she did an amazing job of it.
Palestinians in Gaza are subjected to relentless bombing wherever they go.
I just want to point out, in case anyone's missing it, these are mass graves. Look at this. These are mass graves. These are the kinds of things that, dare I say it, we associate with the Holocaust. The Holocaust that the Zionist state likes to hide behind. All right, to continue.
They are killed in their homes, in places where they seek shelter, in hospitals, in schools, in mosques, in churches, and as they try to find food and water for their families. They have been killed if they failed to evacuate in the places to which they have fled, and even while they attempted to flee along Israeli-declared safe routes. The level of killing is so extensive that those whose bodies are found are buried in mass graves, often unidentified. In the first 3 weeks alone, following 7 October, Israel deployed 6,000 bombs per week. At least 200 times it has deployed 2,000-pound bombs in southern areas of Palestine designated as safe. These bombs have also decimated the north, including refugee camps. 2,000-pound bombs are some of the biggest and most destructive bombs available. They are dropped by lethal fighter jets that are used to strike targets on the ground by one of the world's most resourced armies.
Okay. So finally, we have Thembeka Nukatobi, who really laid out the moral case going to intent. A lot of this case is going to go to whether there was genocidal intent. So he addresses that. And I also found a video that's been circulating that addresses that, at least in terms of some of the troops. So let's see what he had to say.
There is an extraordinary feature in this case that Israel's political leaders, military commanders, and persons holding official positions have systematically and in explicit terms declared their genocidal intent. And these statements are then repeated by soldiers on the ground in Gaza as they engage in the destruction of Palestinians and the physical infrastructure of Gaza. Many propagators of grave atrocities have protested that they were misunderstood, that they did not mean what they said, and that their own words were taken out of context. What state would admit to a genocidal intent? Yet, the distinctive feature of this case has not been the silence as such, but the reiteration and repetition of genocidal speech throughout every sphere of state in Israel. We remind the court of the identity and authority of the genocidal inciters: the Prime Minister, the President, the Minister of Defense, the Minister of National Security, the Minister of Energy and Infrastructure, members of the Knesset, senior army officials, and foot soldiers. Genocidal utterances are therefore not out in the fringes. They are embodied in state policy. The intent to destroy is plainly understood by soldiers on the ground. It is also fully understood by some within the Israeli society, with the government facing criticism for allowing in any aid to Gaza on the basis that it is recanting on its promise to starve Palestinians. Any suggestion that Israeli officials did not mean what they said or were not fully understood by soldiers and civilians alike to mean what they said should be rejected by this court. The evidence of genocidal intent is not only chilling, it is also overwhelming and incontrovertible.
Okay, so we will get to the Israeli defense against that, but he is arguing that the leaders have very clearly communicated genocidal intent in cases like Netanyahu identifying the enemy as Amalek, a enemy in the Bible that was wiped out to the last man, woman, and child, to Israeli officials calling for nuclear weapons for wiping out people in Gaza. So these troops clearly got the message in spite of the Israeli defense. So let's see what they're singing, starting with "I'm Coming to Occupy Gaza." That's burning up the charts in Tel Aviv, folks. I stick by my one mitzvah, that's a good deed, to wipe off the seed of Amalek. I left home behind me. Won't come back until victory. We know our slogan. There are no uninvolved civilians. There are no uninvolved civilians.
I think Taylor Swift did an unplugged cover of that at her concert last week. So, yeah, she is a psyop.
She is. And nobody questioned it. That's what was crazy.
I was 50-50, but now that you played that, I'm like, yeah, okay.
That's clearly.
Because I download the bootlegs of all her concerts.
It's got a beat, and you can dance to it. So what'd you think, Keaton, of the case that South Africa put on there?
Well, it's an open and shut case. I mean, you just played that video. That's one of thousands of pieces of, as he said, overwhelming and incontrovertible evidence of both capacity and intent. That's why the previous video that you showed was instrumental in making this case as well, because a common defense from the sort of milquetoast moderates on this issue is, well, war is complicated. There's always civilian deaths in war. This is not war. War implies a certain fair fight. This is not a fair fight. This is shooting fish in a barrel. This is mass murder on a daily basis with obvious intent. One of the things he was surely making reference to in that video is the Israeli media. Don't forget, folks, when you see Mark Regev or the new woman who they trotted out now to come and talk to CNN and, MSNBC, those are the nice ones that they send here. Those are the mild ones. They say, send those to talk nice to the dumb Americans. You watch the Israeli media, There's that one guy, that clip went viral. The guy saying, I can't sleep at night until I see video of houses exploding. I mean, this is obvious.
And they're all laughing like it's got a tone like the Today Show. They're talking about genocide with that very, breakfast coffee. They're all laughing.
Like
in
Morning
the studio.
Joe when Trump had a bad event or something, the giggle at the Republicans' expense. That's exactly what it is. Just very casual, very lighthearted, very funny. No regard for human life whatsoever. We've seen, in fact, Jimmy played this for us when we were on this very show a few weeks ago. Northern Gaza looks like the surface of the moon. There's nothing there except Israeli flags planted in the ground. So tell me the goal is not to cleanse the area and occupy it for themselves. There's no case whatsoever. It's laughable.
Well, and there are videos of the IDF like beach blanket bingo over there, going into the ocean, having a grant, laughing it up. They're having a great time over there.
Of course. No, it's really unbelievable. And like I said, the purpose of this trial is to get the word out there so that there can be no doubt in anyone's mind, not just the judges on this court, but the world population still has a lot to learn. Even the people who are very on the one hand, on the other hand, I forget who the comic was. Russell, you mentioned this bit quite often. You'll probably know. Comic who says, people like to armchair quarterback and think, what would I do if I were alive during slavery?
Bill
and the
Burr.
answer is, what's that?
That's Bill Burr.
Bill Burr. Okay. So the answer is, for all your big talk, you'd probably be doing the same thing you're doing now, paying some modicum of focus to it and then getting on about your life. And when it comes across the news, oh, isn't that terrible? But on the other hand, it's complicated, right? Like if you are not able to call this for what it is, you are just a worthless and weak person. And there's no excuse for it.
Well, I just wrote that article about artists, and this is one thing that drives me crazy. They all have a lot to say about Dave Chappelle. Not a fucking word about this. Not a word about this. They're terrified to say. I really, with this trial going on, I see nothing from people in the arts. Absolute silence, which, you know what? I'm not going to say it would be fine, but I could tolerate it if they just didn't talk about political matters in general. But, oh, man, they want you to know what they think about Ricky Gervais. Oh, they got it. They got
spent 9 minutes making self-referential and self-aware trans jokes just to bait the media into attacking him. And that's worth a 10 or 11 posts online.
Right, because it doesn't cost them anything.
Right.
Come see us do a live stand-up show. We'll be in Venice, California, Palmdale, California, Omaha, Des Moines, Milwaukee, Lansing, Bend, Oregon, Portland, Oregon, Seattle, Washington, Boston, Massachusetts, and we're going to Europe. Do you live in Europe? We're going to be there. Go to jimmydore.com for a link for all those tickets.